Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. For those that have traveled from afar, welcome to wintry Tallinn. For those that plowed through the snow this morning, welcome to the third edition of this EU Enlargement Conference, which is organized by the International Centre for Defence and Security in cooperation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Estonia. The pronouncements by the Trump administration over the past week have felt like an earthquake around Europe. 2025 has quickly become a make or break year for European strategic autonomy, it seems. The proverbial kicked can has finally run out of road. The European Union needs to change, and it needs to change fast. It cannot just afford to discuss the geopolitical environment, it will have to shape it. And 80 years after the Yalta Conference, there is a new attempt by the great powers to build spheres of influence. And this is, of course, an uncomfortable reality and high time for Europe to pull itself up by the bootstraps. Now, apart from the massive investments in defense, does the EU's enlargement policy need an electroshock, as Mr. Macron said? What is needed to accelerate the accession process of Ukraine, as Commission President von der Leyen said in Munich, and that of the other candidate countries, I hasten to add? Is there sufficient political capital among member states, citizens, also in the candidate countries, to move mountains? Is the are the EU enlargement procedures, which remain subject to unanimity every step along the way, are they effective enough, and are the workarounds which have been introduced over the last couple of years through gradual integration effective enough to meet the geostrategic objectives that enlargement is supposed to attain, according to the European Council? Now, these are some of, all of a sudden, rather existential questions that our political class will have to not just find answers to, but will have to act upon. And so today's conference, I think, provides a good opportunity, an excellent opportunity, unfortunately, given the events over the last couple of days, to exchange ideas how to do so. And together with Ambassadors Antsu and Juha Rusalu of the Estonian MFA, ICDS has convened for you a very rich program with first-class speakers. I think the times are calling upon all of us to speak plainly today. We know Estonians could do so. We have had some last-minute changes, unfortunately, as a result of some of the momentous events over the last couple of days. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian Deputy Minister Olga Stefanishina could no longer make it today. She will be replaced by her Director General, Alexander Ilkov. And the Estonian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Margus Tsahkna, will be delivering welcoming remarks and has to leave shortly afterwards, but he will be replaced by Secretary General Jonathan Vseviov in the panel. You'll find those changes in the online version of the program. Now, I would be remiss not to take this opportunity to warmly thank our partners in this endeavor, the permanent representation of the European Commission in Estonia, the Polish presidency of the Council, and of course Ambassador and the Embassy of Sweden for their generous support in organizing this conference. We will hear from the acting head of the permanent representation of the Commission, Ava Schank-Lukas, and Ambassador Charlotte Wrangberg. There you are, in just a few moments. But first I would like to invite the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, Margus Tsahkna, to offer his opening remarks. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, dear friends. I just came last time back from Germany, in Düsseldorf, and before that it was Munich. And sorry, I cannot be together with you all day, but we have some things to discuss as well with the Prime Minister, because we have now many meetings every day where the European leaders are gathering. Today is one where our Prime Minister is participating as well. But I don't have to explain in what times we are living right now. So Munich. Munich is the word everybody's repeating, and this weekend it was pretty amazing feeling to be in Munich, and I understand that probably and hopefully European leaders understood that the situation is really real. And I don't want to hear about wake-up calls anymore. We have had them too many since at least 2008, when Russia invaded Georgia. We didn't do anything. In 2014, and then more and more. And let's not talk about wake-up call. Let's just wake up and act, because we need to do that. And as well, we don't need to be in panic. I think that it's my personal opinion. I've not discussed it with my government, but I think that things are better in the meaning that now the situation is clear for us all. It's clear what is going to happen. And this parallels what we heard before the Munich conference, that there can happen as well something that happened in 1938. I think that it's already there in the meaning. But in the corridors of Munich, people said that actually we may happen in the year of 1939, when Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was made. And if you're following the news and about the topics between two countries, they're not talking anymore only about Ukraine, probably, but about Europe as well, because Ukraine is a part of Europe, first thing. The second thing, we need to understand that Putin has not changed his main point, and he said it publicly as well after the phone call with President Trump, that he will use these talks or negotiations to eliminate the core reasons or the main points why he actually started this aggression. And it was about us, about Europe, about NATO, and exactly to make a deal about the influence and about to restore the Soviet Union borders and the influence in Europe as well. So we need to understand that we don't need to discuss only, but we need to start making decisions, because otherwise someone else is going to decide instead of us. But Ukrainian ambassador to Berlin, Makeyev, admitted just after this conference that he fortunately didn't spot any Chamberlains in Munich this time, but unfortunately he didn't see many Churchills either. And this is a reality. Who is a Churchill for Europe this time? And we need a Churchill, or Churchills as all together. And it's nice that our leaders are gathering in Paris and many other places, but we have institutions for that, and we have European leaders, and we need to understand that there is no Churchills coming outside from somewhere. We will have very solid, very strong relations still with US, but these relations will be totally different. And as well, I think that President Trump understands and maybe even needs that strong Europe as a partner, because now he sees that we are discussing, but maybe sometimes not making decisions enough quickly. So one of the lessons, and if not the lesson, we have been forced to learn from the history the hard way, demands us not craft a bad peace, a bad deal that won't last, a deal that would nurture the colonial expansionist appetite. And not only maybe about Russia. So let's think about these words. So what we are talking about, existential questions, as we have been talking in Estonia and more internationally already more than 20 years. And I'm not very happy that we were right, and now we are more right than ever before. So let's not only talk about what can we do, but actually we need to act as well. And be honest, what can we do now is to first thing focus, how can we support Ukraine more? How can we give Ukraine the opportunity to decide what is going to happen, even in the conditions when maybe Russia and US is putting something on the table which is not acceptable for them. So somehow we can say even like this, that the European future and security architecture and the position in the future is in the hand of Ukraine, not even us as a very practical and tactical move. And what can we do as Europe? We have all the money in the world. We can invest heavily to our defenses, but of course we need to increase the military support to Ukraine. We are able to do it. If you ask your governments, they have still something left. And also we can buy equipment and capabilities from the third countries still. And we need to do it rapidly. And I know that Kaja Kallas as well put some initiative on the table we're going to discuss next Monday. But it's about not to find even the 27 countries common decision, but it's about every member state to put all efforts in. And let's push it heavily. We have no months to go. We have just a couple of days to make this kind of decision. The second thing is that we have Russian frozen assets in Europe. 300 billion euros worth assets. And let's be realistic. It has been always very hard to roll over the sanction regimes every other 6 months. And we were able to do it in very hard conditions this January. But I don't know why, but I think that it may not happen in this June. And it means that we are going to lose all the sanctions against the Russian, but also we are going to lose all these assets, because the freezing decision of the assets are connected to the sanction package. So we will give additionally Russia 300 billion euros from Europe. So are we ready to do that? How can we explain that? I don't think we can't explain that. Instead of that, let's find now the way to make decisions and take these assets and support Ukraine and give them an opportunity to say what they want to do. What will be their decision to continue fight if there is a need for that? Because there cannot practically be a peace without Ukraine, even if someone is going to decide or going to negotiate about that. It is practically impossible, but Ukraine needs our support, and we need that the peace will come in that conditions that we have agreed. Third thing, we need heavily to invest our defense capabilities, and I was very happy about hearing the Ursula von der Leyen speech in Munich about the restriction of the defense spending on national budget level. So in Estonia, we do solid. I don't know, our depth is like 20% or something, so we can manage that. But it is important that nationally as well, the governments look into the opportunities. We were able, as a European Union, raise 700 billion worth funds within 4 or 2 weeks even when COVID started, no question. And it was not an existential threat, be honest. It was a flu. It was a flu, and we were in panic. But now we have a real existential threat. Existential threat for everybody, not only Baltic states, Poland, Finland, and then the border countries. It's about us all. So let's make decisions. There is no legal problems. Estonia knows that. We have adopted the law in Estonia last year already that we can use the frozen assets. And we're already using these frozen assets, the central bank frozen assets, as guarantees for the long-term loan, $50 billion worth to Ukraine. So there is no reason to hide behind the lawyers' talks. It's about political decision and the leadership, and we need to do it. And of course, the European budget to invest, to find this decision to invest for defense forces, defense capabilities, defense industry. And I just came back from Germany, and they will have elections this weekend. Of course, it takes time probably to form the government. It's up to Germany, of course, but it's good that we have one more country out from the campaign period and having the full mandate to act. Germany is a strong economy in the middle of Europe, and we need more clear mandates for ruling the Europe from the national levels as well. Everybody's talking about Vice President Vance's speech, and I think that there can be many different interpretations, and some were disappointed that why he didn't put the detailed plan on the table. He couldn't do it because the plan is not still there. But what he said, I think very clearly, about Europe and about our democracies was, in my mind, that if we are not dealing with our people, if our democracies and so on, so some others will come after our democracies. And we need to understand that this is even more serious thing. So it's about us, not about anyone else, to decide in Europe what is going to happen. Also, we need to guarantee that our democracies are working well, as they have done mostly during all these times, because democracies are these mandates we rely on. We know from the past, as Estonia as well, in 1940, when democracy was not there, in 1939, then our people couldn't say exactly that we will definitely fight back. Finnish, they did that, and they actually remained independent with a heavy cost, but still. So we need to understand that it is very important. But today we are talking about enlargement, but it's all connected. If we are weak, if we're dealing with any other things, so we are not focusing on enlargement. And I have a long speech here about enlargement, about all the details and chapters and countries, but I think that you know better than me what is the situation, but we need a political will to support enlargement processes. And one thing actually what Russia has said that they're not interested, not stopping the enlargement process, but then we have to figure out why they're not stopping the enlargement process. So maybe they don't need to stop it, because maybe we stop it ourselves. So let's look into that the process will continue, because Ukraine has made tremendous reforms and the success story. We just need to decide to open at least 2 chapters in the first part of this year. As well, Moldova, crazy things. We have made the decisions about funding the Moldova growth plan. Let's do it, and also let's move forward. But Moldova will have as well the parliamentary elections in this autumn. So it's about democracies. It's about, we know what Russia is doing there. So let's focus on that as well, that democracies in Europe, they will work. We have the Western Balkans. They all do differently. But we need to follow that merit-based approach will continue. But finally, we all understand that this will be the political decisions of the European Union to enlarge. And in corridors, there are always dealings and political games, but we are able to play them in the name of enlargement process, because we need to enlarge, because if we're not enlarging, then some other interests will come into Europe more actively than ever before. But of course, the most important is that the Western Balkans countries will follow 100% as well our common foreign and defense security. So many things to do. And the last country I'm really deeply concerned is Georgia. Some says that we have lost Georgia, but I really do believe in Georgian people's will. I had many meetings as well with Georgian people in Munich, and they really rely on us, that the European Union can only not to be more concerned, but we can act as well. And we have made many decisions already about fundings, and also we will continue to fund these organizations who are standing for democracy and for the personal rights in Georgia. But also, it was a very clear message that please make a decision to start to ban or to stop the visa liberation for Georgia. Because this is something real that Georgian people will understand, that if their government is not changing the course, it may happen. You know very well that we are not taking it away just once, but it's just a process that the Commission can start. And maybe this is one example that we can decide, not to be afraid, but to be decisive, that also to show and give a hope for Georgian people. Because if we lose Georgia, finally, then we cannot talk about Armenia, whose government has made many decisions already based on their people's will. And we lose all the region. And I think that Europe cannot let it happen. So, I wish you the fruitful discussions, I hate this phrase, really. This is something that you don't know what to say for the end. But really, let's discuss. I see many people who are actually preparing these decisions that the political leaders must make. And you can do a lot of things. Sometimes, I'm very frank now, I'm not a diplomat, very good diplomat. Sometimes I feel as well that not about Estonia, but in corridors somewhere in Brussels, you may even have the political will, but too many arguments are there against. I think that it's not time for only arguments. It's about the political decisions. So let's rock and roll. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, dear guests, on behalf of the European Commission representation in Estonia, a very warm welcome to all to Tallinn. And thank you for taking the time to participate and to think along on EU enlargement in this very crucial moment in history. It just seems that all the moments are more crucial than the ones before, and it moves very fast. The decision to pursue enlargement is one of the key choices that the EU has made in the recent years, together with the need to focus on our security and also the need to focus on green transition and digital transition. Because for the first time in 10 years, there's clear consensus among member states to move forward with enlargement. And the main answer to this, why is that, is of course the geopolitics. Most importantly, Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine. And we need to support Ukraine as long as it takes. And we will do it. We also need to beef up our own defense capacities, and how we are going to do it, on that the Commission is going to present the white paper on the future of European defense in March. But also we have entered this new era of geostrategies, where we see that economic and military power is used transactionally, and we fall victim to our own dependencies. And to quote the Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, this tense geopolitical context makes it more compelling than ever before that we complete the reunification of our continent under the same values of democracy and the rule of law. We have already advanced considerably over the last years towards integrating new member states, and enlargement will remain a key priority for this Commission. End of quote. So we must ensure that Europe is not divided and consequently weak, because being divided is not going to make us stronger. Being together and united will make us stronger, and it's important that we are together, guided by our shared values and interests. And this is a way for us to ensure peace on our continent. The previous speakers have already amply underlined the urgency of this process. But besides the goal itself, it's important to focus on the implementation. And here, there's work to be done on both sides, in the Union and in the candidate countries. The discussions today will, I'm sure, provide valuable insights and food for thought on this number of questions and tasks ahead of us. So I wish you all, instead of fruitful, very insightful and useful discussions today. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here, and Thank you so much to the organizers, ICDS, Commission and MFA. I will not talk about Trump and Vance. I think I leave that. But I want to talk about the enlargement and Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine led to a realization. Because there is now a consensus that EU enlargement is a matter of how and when, and not a matter of if. Because enlargement is a strategic instrument that we must use to build security and democracy in Europe. Ukraine applied for EU membership 4 days after Russia's full-scale invasion. Moldova sent its application just a couple of days after that. Both were granted candidate status some months later. In June last year, the accession negotiations were officially launched, and this is a true achievement. It is primarily, of course, an achievement by the countries themselves and their ability to pursue necessary reforms despite the ongoing war and hybrid attacks and disinformation campaigns. But it's also an achievement by the EU, a display of EU unity and strategic orientation. Other important steps have also been taken. I'm not mentioning everything, of course, but for example, Albania has opened clusters and Montenegro has closed chapters. Last year, the European Council also gave the go-ahead to open accession negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina. These are important steps showing that the enlargement process is moving forward and that the candidate countries are advancing. And it sends a signal that EU is serious about this. We must now work to maintain this political momentum. On the one hand, we must prepare within the EU to be ready for enlargement, that has already been mentioned, and to continue to support the candidate countries. On the other hand, the countries must continue their reform work and align with the EU acquis. The EU has taken steps this past year to match this political momentum. There has always been financial support to the countries, not least through the instrument of pre-accession assistance. In the past 2 years, new financial instruments have been put in place, and the concept of gradual integration has been made more concrete. When it comes to Ukraine, Europe has promised to stand by Ukraine as long as it takes. It was a true sign of commitment when the EU decided on much-needed multi-year funding through the Ukraine facility, just to mention one example. In parallel, Sweden offers bilateral assistance, also making use of Swedish agencies and offering the best expertise we have in the form of a Nordic-Baltic high-level advisory group launched last spring and also initiated and funded by Sweden. And EU is supporting Moldova with an economic plan, which is the largest EU financial support package since Moldova's independence. It will boost Moldova's economy, of course, and bring the country closer to EU membership, and provide also significant financial assistance. And Sweden is also supporting Moldova bilaterally. We want EU to open concrete accession negotiations in the spring with both Ukraine and Moldova. And I want to repeat again the impressive reforms that have been made despite Russia's war. But in order to be credible, and this has to be mentioned as well, the enlargement process must be merit-based, and the rule of law must remain the core of the process. The rule of law is the foundation upon which to build prosperous societies, and is also a necessity for the well-functioning of the single market. Fundamental reforms and stable institutions benefit applicant countries and current member states. We gain stability, more solid democratic development, stronger economic growth, and resilience. Some of the central requirements of what needs to be done are tied to the fundamentals of the EU accession process. The rule of law, fundamental rights, the functioning of democratic institutions, public administration, and the economic criteria. With the war on our continent, our expectation is also, which has already been mentioned as well, on the candidate countries to fully align with the EU common foreign and security policy. And those expectations has also grown. It's a matter of a strategic choice. We need to stand together in support of the European security order. So it's in our interest to help the countries to move closer to membership. We are open to ideas of gradual integration, but the end goal should be full membership. Countries that live up to EU's high standards should not remain in some waiting room. If they are ready to join us, we must be ready to let them in. In this geopolitical situation, we cannot afford to let countries that are able and willing to remain on the outside. If we don't offer partnership, as was mentioned by the Minister for Foreign Affairs as well, others would be happy to do that. So when the candidate countries seize this enlargement momentum, so must we. So wishing you fruitful, insightful, whatever success with this conference. Thank you very much.